Welcome to A Day in the Garden with me, Christina Linder. Today we're going to talk a little bit about hydrangeas, as we're in the middle of summer and this is really now hydrangea season. Can be very complicated choosing hydrangeas, and there's a lot of different varieties. So I thought I'd explain just the very basic parts of hydrangea gardening. So there are certain hydrangeas that do great in full sun. Amongst those are Panicle hydrangeas that tend to have cone-shaped flowers. There are other types of hydrangeas that also have cone-shaped flowers, and one of those is this oakleaf hydrangea. Nice big leaves pick up all the little bits that may fall on them. And you can see how the actual flower here is kind of cone-shaped. The leaves, of course, are shaped similarly to an oak leaf with lots of dirt on them, instead of just being round and smooth like all the other different kinds of hydrangeas. So oak leaf hydrangeas, they bloom on last year's wood. So if you're going to trim them back, it is best to do that no later than mid-August, or else you might be cutting off the flowers for next year. That's the first one. We also have what we call Bigleaf hydrangeas, and we have one here that is a mophead, and you can see how the flower is kind of shaped like a head of cauliflower. And that's one way to be able to tell. The leaves here are also quite close to the stem. So this little part here is not very long. And these also bloom on last year's wood. So same rule as the oak leaf, don't cut them any later than mid-August. You can also just leave them. If you don't feel like you need to cut them smaller, then it's fine to leave them and let them get to size. Here is another type of big leaf hydrangea. This is a very small one. It's just not a really vigorous plant, but you can see how this is called. This looks very different than the mophead, and this is a lacecap, and you can see how the flowers are only around the outside of the cluster, and the little buds in the center will never open. So this has a little bit of an appearance of lace, and that's why it's called a lace cap. Same rule as for the mopheads and for the oak leaves. Don't cut them past mid-August. And then here is another lovely big leaf hydrangea, and you can see how the flowers here look a little bit like stars. Isn't that beautiful? It is quite a bushy one, this one, but lots of little side branches. That is because last year I had to cut this back because it had some damage from the snow. And this variety is called Inspire. And when I bought it, it was actually pink. So this is how it started out, and now it's gone purple. And the reason for that is because of the pH. So if you have acidic soil, all of these, the mopheads and the lace caps, and also this beautiful one here, are sensitive to the pH. So if it's acidic soil, they will turn bluish, and if it is alkaline, they'll turn pinkish. So if your hydrangeas are not performing to your expectations and preferences, you can actually meddle with their pH a little bit and change that. So here we have aluminum sulfate, which is something that you can add to the soil to make it more acidic, and thus turning your flowers bluer. So if your soil is very alkaline, this is the acidifier that you can use. If you prefer them to be more pink, however, then lime is the key. And you can just sprinkle some lime underneath them and work that into the top layer of the soil. And then every time you water, the water will bring down the acidity to where the roots are, and you will be changing the color of your hydrangeas. That works for the big leaf hydrangeas, but it doesn't necessarily work for other varieties. We also have smooth hydrangeas, And here you can see, again, we have a flower head that is similar to a cauliflower. But if you're wanting to figure out the difference between a bigleaf mophead and a smooth hydrangea, you can see here that here, this stem between the leaf and the actual stem is much longer, and here it is much shorter. So if it's got a long stem, it's a smooth hydrangea. If it's got a short stem, then it is a bigleaf hydrangea. And the smooth hydrangeas are also native to North America. So if you want to grow more native flowers, these exist naturally from Canada down through the States. And this is always white. This one is called Incredible. We also have them in pink, and this is Invincible. And here again, you can see that this stem length here between the big stem and the leaf is a little bit longer. And these bloom on the current year's growth. So what that means is that you can actually cut these down late winter, early spring, and they will still bloom for you. Whereas if you do that with some of the others, they will pout and they will not bloom at all. I also have some rather magnificent, interesting things here. I bought last year this beautiful hydrangea called Wedding Gown. And here you can see, this is just a small plant, and it only pushed out a couple of blooms for me this year because it's still a baby. But here you can see the beautiful flowers almost having an appearance of lace. And these tend to be white. They may shift a little bit, potentially to pink, but don't expect any great colors out of a wedding dress. We also have another very interesting hydrangea now. And this is called a Fairy Trail Bride. So here you can see that the flowers are borne on these little shorter stems in mass. All other hydrangeas are more upright, but the Fairy Trail is trailing. So this is something that's going to grow closer to the ground and has really, really beautiful shape. So lovely. This is a hydrangea I searched for years before I realized that in Britain and Europe this is called a runaway bride, and here it is a fairy trail. We also have here, finally, this is a Panicle hydrangea. So this is also a hydrangea that blooms on current year's growth. So there is a lot of different types of panicles. You can really see the cone-shaped flower here. There are some that are very small. These are also full sun tolerant and very heat tolerant. There is one variety called Little Hottie that has small flower clusters and is excellent for a drier environment and in full sun. They get to about 3 feet tall. There's lots of different varieties. So I hope I might have piqued your interest a little bit as far as hydrangeas go, and maybe solved some of the questions that you might have. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope that this has inspired you to go buy a whole bunch of hydrangeas if you don't already have some. And as always, please like, share and follow, and we'll see you next time. Happy gardening!